Polls are for dogs. We all know that, right? A politician asked about a poll is going to come up with a line like that. No one pays attention to them, except we all do. We all pay attention to the polls, and don't let the politicians fool you. They do as well. One of the pollsters they should be paying attention to, one of the pollsters that I still trust, I'm not sure why, Darrell Bricker is with Ipsos and joins me now from Toronto. Darrell, what's your official title? I mean, I just call you Mucky Muck, but...
I'm the CEO of Global Public Affairs for Ipsos.
Which is pretty big. That's a global firm. You guys have offices everywhere. And we'll get into this in a minute because you've been crunching numbers for elections around the world. But you guys poll around the world for election campaigns as well.
We certainly do. I mean, every major election that you see out there, we're usually in the game. We're certainly busy in the United States right now. We're certainly busy in the UK, France, any of the big democracies that are having elections, we're usually there.
All right, let's talk about your latest numbers on the Canadian election. It shows two really interesting things to me in the top line numbers. Statistical tie between Stephen Harper and Thomas Mulcair, and Trudeau dropping even more?
Yeah, that's what we're showing. So what's happened, the biggest trend, I think, since the last polling that we put out about a month ago, is that the Tories have picked up about 5 points, the Liberals have dropped about 6, and the NDP's picked up another point. So where we are right now, compared to the last election results in 2011, is that the NDP are basically around where they were. They're up a little bit to where Jack Layton finished. The Liberal Party is actually still up quite a bit. I mean, Michael Ignatieff only got 19 in the last election, and they're still up to 25. And the Conservatives are down to 33. They're down about 6 points from the last election. So all that's happened since the last poll is the Tories have picked up a bit of momentum and caught up to the NDP.
All right, so top line numbers tell us a little bit in a geographically diverse country. I've said for a long time there's not really a national campaign. There's 4, 5, or 6 regional campaigns. Is that still showing up in your polling data, with the NDP doing really well in some spots, the Conservatives in others, and I think the Liberals, are they still dominating Atlantic Canada and that's it?
Yeah, they still are, although their lead is declining. And that's really one of the big problems for the Liberal Party, is the only place they seem to be dominating right now is Atlantic Canada. And with only 32 seats there, it's not going to make a difference really in terms of who is going to win or lose this election. It doesn't mean that those seats aren't important and anybody wouldn't want them, but it's not going to be decisive like, say, for example, a sweep of Quebec or a sweep of Ontario would be. Province of Quebec, the NDP is still well ahead, but we're seeing the bloc up quite a bit. Ontario, the Conservatives are ahead by about 5 points. That means that they're doing well in the 905 and are poised, if they do well in the 905, to get reelected, I would say. You move your way out west, the Conservatives lead in every other place except British Columbia, where the NDP is ahead. But the problem for the Liberal Party is that in all of those places, they're generally no better than third.
All right. So is BC still kind of a real battle with Liberals, NDP, and Conservatives all in contention there?
No, it's turning into a battle between two parties right now, between the NDP and the Conservatives. So what's happening is we've got this new school type two-party race. I mean, we all remember back to the, those of us who were around in the 80s, all remember 70s and 80s, always remember that it was the Liberals and the Conservatives, progressive Conservatives, squaring off with the NDP in third. Now what we're seeing emerge is a new type of two-party race, where it's the NDP, a true left, and the Conservatives, a true right, and the third party trying to find a place to get into the conversation, the Liberal Party well behind.
Which is something that Stephen Harper and the late Jack Layton both wanted for a long time. They wanted to kind of wedge the issues so that the Liberals didn't know where to turn. They wanted this clear left-right divide.
Well, it's pretty hard for the Liberals to find a space on the national agenda when the issues are related to the economy. So the NDP is seen as having a very clear profile in terms of worrying about people who are having a hard time making ends meet. And then you've got the Conservatives on the other side who are more worried about people paying too much in taxes and government spending being out of control. A little ironic given that they're in charge of the government. Okay, so if you're the Liberal Party, where do you fit in there?
All right. Well, and this is showing up in your polling numbers because this has to be the most worrying thing for the Liberals. I also think it has to be worrying a bit for the Conservatives as well, how much the anti-Conservative anti-Conservative, anti-Harper vote is coalescing around Tom Mulcair now. It's really becoming a case of people saying this is the clear alternative if you want Harper out.
Right, and that's what the big worry is for the Conservatives, is when you take a look at second choice support, given that the NDP is so popular, especially with Liberal Party voters, that if they crush the Liberals down too far and those second choice supporters move over to the NDP to stop Harper, then it's possible that the NDP could get elected. And so that's essentially what the Conservatives have to get, is some situation in which the NDP doesn't rise too much more beyond where they are, that the Liberals slip a little bit, but they somehow find a way to get those voters to move to the Conservative Party rather than to the NDP. And so far, what they've been able to do to push them down to 25 is probably pick up some blue Liberals, which is why we see the 5-point increase for the Conservatives in our latest polling.
And let me ask about that, because Stephen Harper and the Conservatives are only polling at 33%, yet you asked for approval rating, and 44% either strongly or somewhat approve of his performance. How does that relate? How do you get to that point?
Well, that's the contradiction that Stephen Harper has to deal with, and that's the gap that he has to close. So if he doesn't have a lot of second choice support, he knows he's got at least 44% of the population approving. Stephen Harper doesn't need 44% of the population. He probably needs somewhere between about 38 and 40 in order to win a majority. So what he has to do is he has to find a way to take those people who are saying that they're approving of the government's performance, to tell them that that performance is threatened and will not be replicated by the opposition party. And this is where incumbency comes into play for the Conservatives, which is a really strong factor in terms of being reelected. It's actually quite hard to knock off incumbents.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me about the, you've looked at elections around the world and approval rating and reelection. What are you noticing in terms of a trend there?
Well, what we see is at about 500 elections worldwide, is that there's a very strong correlation between incumbency and being reelected. And you can actually use some probability statistics to determine what the likelihood is that somebody would be reelected. If somebody has an approval level in the mid-40s, like Harper does right now, the likelihood that they're going to get reelected is somewhere in the 70%, 75% range. So wow. Even though it looks like he's not doing that well, the expectation is that what will happen is that gap between approval and vote will eventually start to close, and people do have a tendency to prefer the devil that they know as opposed to the devil that they don't. So what has to happen for Mulcair in the NDP is they have to look really like a very strong replacement for the Conservative Party, and almost risk-free.
Let me ask you about this. Conservatives love to talk about how they get a ballot box bump. They always come in a little bit higher than where the pollsters had them when it comes to E-Day. Is that your experience?
Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. It depends on the dynamics in the campaign. I think in the Ontario campaign, most people were expecting that there was going to be a bit of a ballot box bonus for the Conservatives that didn't show up. I mean, Tim Hudak was, I guess, particularly uninspirational. And as a result, people who normally would have participated in the election campaign could not hold their nose and do that. So Stephen Harper has to make this seem like a real battle in which he is a really palatable choice, and that there's an awful lot at risk if people don't vote for the Conservative Party. And that's maybe when you get people who more habitually vote to show up. Hudak was incapable of doing that. Stephen Harper has shown that he has been capable of doing that. They tend to get a ballot box bonus. And the problem for Mulcair in the NDP is that they've shown, the NDP as a national party has shown an inability to do as well at the ballot box as they do in the...
Well, except now they're using the strategy that the Liberals used against them for years. They're using it on the Liberals. They're saying, well, if you really want to get rid of Stephen Harper, we're the alternative, and that's showing up in your polls. But, I mean, that's their messaging as well. So it could turn around on them. I think that part of why they didn't do that in the past is that the Liberals always came out and said, well, if you want to stop these crazy, awful Conservatives, you've got to vote Liberal, and a lot of New Democrats would.
That's right. And where it gets really interesting is in a place like the city of Toronto, where I'm sitting right now, where the Liberals have recruited a whole bunch of star candidates to run in, particularly in the 416 ridings, that all of a sudden look like they're somewhat imperiled, and some of them are actually going to be challenged by strong NDP candidates. So if the NDP is able to knock off some of those candidates in the city of Toronto, you could see some big upsets.
All right, let me ask you this to close out. We've still got all of August, all of September, and almost 3 weeks in October until we vote. My experience is campaigns still matter. Are you ready to say that the die is set in terms of how we'll end up, or the next 3 months really matter still?
No, we're just at the starting blocks. I mean, the truth is that anything can happen in a campaign, and in an era in which partisanship has really declined, people can really consider any of the three major options, maybe even the fourth, the Green Party, or the Bloc Québécois in the province of Quebec. They can consider any of those options. So I don't think anybody's got a lock on this. I think it's going to be a particularly hard-fought campaign on which, small percentages of the population moving one direction or another in specific regions is going to decide who's going to win this campaign. So I think we've got a long way to go, Brian.
All right, Darrell Bricker with Ipsos Global Public Affairs. Thanks so much, Darrell.
My pleasure.